Thank you. Once again, I welcome in a special way all artistic colleagues, scholars from various backgrounds here in this hall. As we get the list, we'll mention your name for recognition. Education is for the improvement of lives of others and for living the society and our community better than we found it. Is this still the story? Is this still the story? Permit me to invite in a special way to set the ball rolling this morning the Grand Sage of Education in Africa, our own Professor Emeritus Professor Pai Obayan, to give your opening remarks.
Welcome, representative of the Vice Chancellor. And I'll just say, ladies and gentlemen, with particular greetings to my grandchildren, second I'll start by saying that this year was put in motion only 14 days ago. And I quickly called on 14 ladies and gentlemen, faculty, to show that this happens in less than 2 weeks. And it has absolutely left us. Let's clap for them. The guests, the special guests we invited, particularly to speak this morning, were also contacted only about 9 days ago. And within 9 minutes, they all accepted. Clap for them. Some of them will have secrets, but some traffic. You'll be getting to know them later. Now, ladies and gentlemen, today is a special day. You can quote me, whatever the problem, whatever the issues, education, yes. You can even repeat after me, whatever the problem, whatever the issues, whatever the difficulties, whatever the challenges, education is the answer. So let's clap. And let's beat our chest for belonging to education. Clap for yourself. Now, talking more serious. UNESCO is the United Nations Specialized Agency for the promotion of education. I had the pleasant duty the intention is, first of all, to get this community here and the community at large to know that education is at the foundation of effort. But most important, the United Nations have declared today the World Education Day. And this is the 4th time it's being celebrated. But this year is very special. UNESCO set in motion the process of getting everybody, and I mean everybody, and that means all the 7 billion people in the world, because they are not beneficiaries of education. To think of the future of education. So everybody is contributing, and whatever you contribute here, we go into that pool of knowledge. And the emphasis is on what? Two things. One is resilience. What is resilience? You wake up in the morning, you earn your salary yesterday, today is finished. Will you commit suicide? You say, this thing hard, but mom must what? You get up today, your leg is paining you, as we say in our English. When you go back and speak, you drag that leg and go ahead. So resilience is you have a shock. And you say, this thing is terrible, but life must go. So the greatest shock of our time has been COVID-19. It has had disruption in everything. When I saw these fashionable women 2 years ago, they were not wearing masks. But now it will be unfashionable not to wear masks. But that disruption there, must we fold our arms? Must we all commit suicide? No, we absorb it and we say we go ahead. And when you go ahead, and the more obstacles. And the successful person is the one who has absorbed all the obstacles, even absorbed all the insults. That's what resilience is all about. The world is thinking of post-COVID resilience. The world thinks you cannot do this without promoting education. And what are we promoting education? Because we say United Nations, it means you and I. First is to take stock. Stock taking. Madam, you wake up in the morning, they say there's no milk. You open the cupboard, but I put milk here yesterday. Stop taking. They say, driver say no petrol. You search all your bag pocket. I think money is there. Stop taking. So the world is saying, we've been promoting education since human beings came. Remember, education is not just schooling. Education starts, when does education start? Some people will say from birth is a lie. The moment that magic happens and you lock the door and put up the thinking nobody sees except profession. So we are all education in education. So what we've been doing, have we been doing the right thing? That's section 1. Section 2. The future is always very uncertain because changes continue. But can we try to reimagine that future and how would education fit in? So I will not go into details because the specialists will be talking, but the purpose is one, that the whole world is discussing education and they want all of us to contribute. Please be free to contribute. Even if your ideas look stupid to you, when you contribute it becomes richer, it becomes less. And 2, it wouldn't pay that the whole world will be talking and Nigeria is not talking. And 3, it will not pay that Nigeria is talking and the education practitioners and thinkers are not talking. So please feel free to contribute because your contribution will be synthesized and become part of what the world is saying. And when you bear to this in mind, take stock of what we've been doing and ask yourself, what have we not done well, so and how to right the wrongs in the years to come, so that we'll fit into this year that is already lost. What is this year to come? It is complex, but you people are used. Everybody here is used to even the young ones here. They do what? E-learning, what again? E-commerce, and the adolescent ones do e-dating. So if my grandchildren are doing e-dating, their own children do e-marriage. The children are going to do e-babies. Or this e is a reality. It's a word of e everywhere. And we're now moving from e everywhere to e everything, to e everywhere. So when you say fourth industrial revolution, you are pushing to e beyond the e that you do today. And how would education fit? So So my message is, bear this in mind, I'm prepared to contribute. And finally, thank everybody who's involved, including yourself and yourselves.
Thank you so much, Professor Emeritus Professor Payo Bayan, for that opening remarks from you. We can have less, always drink from that pot of wisdom. Permit me once again to introduce my distinguished colleague, Director of the Office of International Programs in University of Ibadan, Professor Ayotola Aremu. She was part of it there. He's here. The member of the team. Thank you. Welcome. So I've been asked to, because the seats now have been decorated, and so I have to bring before Professor Kolawole gives his opening remark. Professor Keo Utoketa, please join the higher seats. Put your hands together for me. Then Professor Esther Ojolo too. Come on, get there. Pick it up. And then I'm Professor E. Adenike Mege. Please lift it up for her. Please keep doing it. Keep doing it. Keep doing it for her. Yes. Keep doing it. Yes. Thank you. Professor Kolawole, the dean for not coming as the dean now. He's wearing so many caps today. The convener, the this, the that. But I won't say it in the light of Professor Akinsola's comment. His own is X this, X that. But Professor Kolawole is not X, he's present here. And so lift it up for Professor COO Kolawole and he gives his opening remark.
The Vice Chancellor of University of Ibadan, the greatest university in the world, ably represented by our dear friend and brother, Professor Ito Ayola of the Vice Chancellor Administration, and a friend of the faculty. Is all right. You're welcome, sir. The grand sage of education in the world, not only in Africa, a mentor, and our guy at the top, Professor Emeritus Obaya. I'd like to welcome you, sir. The Director of the Institute of Education, the Dean Faculty of Education that I'm also representing, distinguished discussants on the high table, our own retired Professor R.A. Adeyoye. Distinguished colleagues on the other side of the debate. On behalf of the Standing Committee of the Institute of Education and Faculty of Education, that responded timeously to the prompt by Professor Emeritus Obayan that we should do something to mark today. I stand here to welcome all of us on behalf of the Standing Committee and all of us in the Institute of Education and the Faculty of Education. This year's International Day of Education is anchored on a theme, changing forms, transforming education. It is based on the fact that education is a way of life that we are all familiar with, irrespective of our definition, our concept, our understanding of that concept. But this year, our attention is drawn to the fact that it's about time we took a critical look at education with a view to making it relevant for now and the future. And so I'm particularly very glad when I listened to the UI anthem, the last two lines. Each time I listen to the anthem and those two lines, I give credit to the people who composed the anthem. It goes not, and I quote, it is a mind that knows that is ready, end quote. And I had to that by saying that the mind that knows through education. And so those of us who are in the business of education are the luckiest people on earth, irrespective of our social status. And there's something wrong about our social status anyway, because there's nothing everybody else is doing that we cannot do. This year's International Day of Education is particularly set aside to celebrate the role of education for peace and development. That is, education plays this dual role of ensuring peace and ensuring development. And so it's anchored on the fourth goal of the SDG currently that we're talking about. And some of the things that the fourth goal emphasizes are creating inclusive, equitable, and quality education and lifelong learning opportunities for all. Meaning, therefore, that quality primary education must be made available for both boys and girls. There must be quality access. There must be increased teacher availability in the school system. There must be infrastructure. There must be no discrimination of any kind. And that education must drive sustainability. And then education must be used to galvanize the people for development now and in the future. And so when Prof called us to say, look, if a day like this is set aside, we must, those of us in education must not react. We must take the bull by the horns and let other people react to what we have done, instead of sympathizing after the show was ended. And so we responded timeously. So I want to thank my colleagues, because we had to be meeting the last 2 weeks to raise money. Prof even contributed his own quota. Thank you so much, sir, for motivating us. And so here we are today to celebrate a business, a discipline that we all, celebrate. And then to also create awareness in the minds of people as to the possibilities, to me, which are endless, that education can drive. It is therefore from this background that we have invited people to speak to us from the primary school level, early childhood education, to speak to us from the angle of secondary education, to speak to us from tertiary education and adult education. And then we also are going to create time to listen to people whose future are going to be determined by education, to tell us what kinds of things they want to see education being able to do to them, or do for them, or help them to do. So on behalf of all of us, the standing committee, and the entire members of staff and students of the Faculty of Education and the Institute of Education, University of Ibadan, I'd like to welcome all of us, happily to this symposium. And I wish us the best as we listen to our discussion. Thank you so much.
We can make it bigger for him. Yes. Education. I'm quoting the sage now. Number 1 is education. Number 2, education. Number 3, 4, and the 100 is education. It's educationary. That's his preaching. Let's put our hands together for the grand stage of education. Thank you, Professor CEO, for that. We have in this gathering today Dr. Aye Olasukomi. Let's welcome Olasukomi here. We have Dr. Sherifat F. Akurede is in our midst. Let's welcome her. Dr. Adebayo Ibitayo is also here. Please keep clapping for these people, wonderful people. Dr. Mabel Aidika is here. Dr. Emily Omilani. We also have Mr. T.A. Osofisa is here in this gathering. Are we tired? We're just starting. Adeoye Ulukemi Esther is here. And Adeoye Fatima Jadesola. We also have in this gathering Taiwo Olufumbi, Stella, Dr. Stella Oladeji Sisi Mama is here. Oh, okay. Earlier on, I welcome the representative of the Dean of Arts, Dr. Olusegun Peter. Okay, he's here in our midst now. Let's welcome him. Thank you. Thank you. We also have Mrs. Adeleke Modupe Esther. We have Dr. Mrs. Ifoma Onyezere, Dr. A.I. after the head department of educational management is here. We have Ogubemi Victoria Iwande and Oketola Anthony Adewale. We also have Olayiwola Bamishe Adeola as well as Onasaya Oluchi here in our midst. Let's clap, 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 clap. We still have Adelare, your name is not on there. Maybe they don't like you again. They used to like you before. We have also in this gathering secretary to the Institute of Education, our grandma. This is Adejoke Akepelu, who does this that I'm doing better over the years, we know. We have also here NTA, Nigerian Television Authority, here. Welcome them. Impact Business Radio is here, and for the Broadcasting Corporation of Oyo State is also here. Education, education, education. I'd like to inform this gathering that this program is streaming live, and several of our colleagues across the globe are also joining online. As we get names of persons who want to make contributions, we'll let you know. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, you will allow me now at this point to come back home and give honor to those to the person whom it is due. I'm talking about the chairman of this occasion, the Vice Chancellor of the University of Ibadan, ably represented by the Deputy Vice Chancellor of Administration, Professor E.O. Ayola. Please put our hands together in a big way for Professor Ayola.
Thank you very much. My pleasure to be here this morning. Members of the High Table, distinguished Director Professor Wanya, the Dean of the Institute of Education, Professor Adele Oye, Professor Kolawole, the representative of the state government, our colleagues at the other distinguished ladies and gentlemen. It is my pleasure to represent our acting Vice Chancellor of this occasion, Professor Kayode Oyebode Adipo Ali, who is away from the university at the moment because of the business of the university. And they have asked me to come here this morning to represent him. So I am representing him also here in my personal capacity, being invited by the organizers of this event. So we welcome every one of us to this symposium. Education. We cannot emphasize the importance of education anywhere. And we also know, those of us that are in the business of education, that when you talk about classification of countries in terms of advanced nation, in terms of emerging economy, it's about education. It's about how serious they were or are with working education for the young. Many of them see education as investment, not necessarily something that you have to get money or get returned immediately. And that is why we are moving forward. And we pray that in this country, we also get there. We recognize the role of the Faculty of Education, the Institute of Education in this country. No one can say anything about education in Nigeria without mentioning this university, this faculty, this institute. And that is something that is gliding us. Everything started from here.
Let me also say one or two things about at times as a mathematician, we are all involved with mathematical knowledge. I was at a symposium the other time when we were talking about the future of nation, the classification of future developed country, advanced nations. So what are the kind of things that the classification for the future going to take into consideration? It's about how those countries are able to advance new technology that advance human living. So imagine technology, how we going to read. So people are now talking about the knowledge economy. Knowledge economy. We have many countries in the whole world now where they do not have mineral, they do not have oil, they do not have anything. But the only thing they have there is knowledge economy. People like places like Japan, for example, taking education so serious, you begin to see technology and magic. So they are young ones, they already know. So they are already being proper to be able to sustain their knowledge economy. And even then, so how far are we? So apart from our general education, so we also need to look at how this nation can advance when it comes to knowledge economy for the future. I believe the discussion of today will do justice to all these aspects of educational development that we have. Let me once again welcome to this important occasion. I will not be able to stay to the end of this program because we have a number of programs that I have to attend. We have Vice Chancellor. Thank you very much. Keep doing for my Vice Chancellor, please. Thank you. Thank you very much, sir. Education, education, education. Ladies and gentlemen, I welcome to this gathering formally Dr. Ikmat Lanre Junait. She's here in our midst. We also have Dr. Tayo Omale. He's also here with us. Please put our hands together. And of course, my friend and brother, Dr. Felix Ibode is here. I please his high priest. We recognize the fact that some other dignitaries have entered this gathering. We recognize them and welcome them. Dr. Adebayo from Alafe is here in our midst. Let's welcome him. We also have our own brother, Dr. D.A. Oluwole is here. We also have Dr. Tolu Lope, Badamachi, the subject, Faculty of Education. Dr. M.O. Ogundoku. We also have Dr. Adetubi Akiyemi and Dr. T.O. Akinola. Please, big one for them. I'd like to inform you that we're streaming live on YouTube, and of course at Crutch Sky News, and then of course Crutch. Password? Crutch. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. The policymakers are here. The policymakers when it comes to education. And we're lucky to have in our midst this morning the Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Education, Oyo State, Minister of Education, in person of Mrs. Aminat Atere. A big one for her, please. Please, your seat is up. Keep doing it for the PS. The people on the drama say it isn't easy. Yes. Keep doing on the PS on her seat. Yes. Yes. You're tired, come on, do it. Yes, thank you. Yes. Yes. If the PS says we should shut down now by her powers, we'll shut down. I hope you know. But she has said we should continue. Should we continue? Okay, she said we should continue. Thank you. Let's thank the PS and another round of applause. Thank you, PS. So We move on. We now have our students here from the various schools. We have the primary section, we have the secondary, because they have to first. What you and, well, it's just like the story at the ASU meeting where somebody who was just a senior lecturer rose and said, in my experience in this university, and the elderly one said, what experience? He said, what experience? What are you talking about? When were you born? You know, and so we're talking about what they used to do and what we continue doing and then what we hope it will be. The children may not know what they used to do. Some of us are even reading what they used to do in books. Now we are doing certain things. Sometimes people argue, education standard had fallen. Some other ones say, no, children are doing things that we couldn't do those days. E-eating, like Papa said. E-cake, E-everything, E-administration. Some of us will have to give our phones and computers to these kids to manipulate for us whenever we are in trouble. A lot of e-marketing and all that, e-teaching, all of that. So it's under falling. That's not the issue. What is it? Changing direction now. The kids, the young people will be telling us, changing course, transforming education. What are their expectations? What kind of education are they dreaming of? The discussants will be talking about this. But let's first hear from these young people, the upcoming generation. It's not a story of the future belongs to you. And then at 80 years, somebody is still telling them what they told them 50, 60 years ago. The future leaders are the youths. When will it be their turn? When? So, but we know that with the right type of education, they will know what and when it's their turn. So we'll have the schools introduce themselves, and then we have one person from each of the schools to speak to us on their expectations, beginning from the primary section and then to the second. Can we identify the schools here, please? I have staff school. Our own staff school at Yes. Yes, staff school. I hope the teacher will identify who will speak to us there. And let us have the name of the person who will speak to us very shortly. Methodist Grammar School. What I will do is also here. We have somebody nominated already to speak to us. I saw another school coming in. Is that here? What? Bishop Phillips Academy. Okay, the speaker should please come forward from Bishop Phillips. Please come. Clapping for him. It's the first time he's doing it.
The chairman, the members of the podium, my teachers, good morning. My name is Oyemi Daniel. I am from the University of Ibadan South School. I am here education is learning something new from somebody who is more experienced than you are. There are two types of education, and they are the formal and the informal education. The informal education takes place at home and in the society, where you are taught cultural values and the societal norms. The formal education takes place at school, where you are taught within the four walls of the classroom. We have three phases of the formal education, and they are the primary, the secondary, and the tertiary levels. The primary school consists of the primaries 1 to 6. The secondary school consists of the junior secondary school JS 1 to 3, the senior secondary school SS 1 to 3. The educational policy in Nigeria is 6-3-3-4, which means 6 years in the primary school, 3 years in the junior secondary school, 3 years in the senior secondary school, 4 years in the tertiary school, except for courses like medicine, law, engineering, agriculture, and so on. Now, what are the challenges facing education in Nigeria? Inadequate funds. Education in Nigeria is not well funded. Instead of the 26% recommended by the UNESCO, Nigerian government is not even allocating even up to half of this 26%. And these are the very bad effects on education. This is the reason why there are not enough facilities like classrooms, computers, laboratories, and standard libraries. Number 2, teachers are not well paid, and this is why they are not well motivated to do their work. And there are strikes, actions everywhere with the 3 phases of education. Inadequate qualified teachers. This is very common in private schools, where you see a secondary school fail out as a class teacher. And these are a very bad effect on education. How do we expect such a person to impart knowledge? And you know we cannot give what we don't have. Insecurity of lives and property is another problem. This is very rampant in the north, where pupils and their teachers are abducted on a daily basis. This is the reason why many schools have closed down and parents remove their children from schools. Unemployment. Many graduates do not have jobs. This is why those coming behind look for quicker ways to make money. As a result of this, youth of nowadays are involved into yahoo, armed robbery, kidnapping, and other social vices. How do we overcome these problems? The problem will be solved if all the issues raised are well addressed by all the stakeholders in education, which includes the government, the teachers, and even the pupils. The government should pay proper attention to funding of education and avoid policies of assault. With this, education in Nigeria will be in better shape. I thank you for listening.
I think we can do much better, but is it okay? We haven't been wasting money after all. Done excellently. Excellently. Kudos. Yes. He's raised a number of issues. From his perspective, he said what education is, and at his level, learning from those who know. That's what he feels. And then a number of issues, I'm sure policymakers, particularly here, Honorable Commissioner represented by the Permanent Secretary, what government should do. Private school owners have been challenged here. They will tell us true or false. Those who form the curriculum, the teachers, stakeholders, they are here. Your products are doing Yahoo Yahoo. What will you do? Policies of assault. Are they into gymnastics? Why are the policies of assault? Why? So all these are the issues that these panelists will be answering and throwing light on them, and then of course solving some of these problems. And we'll leave this place better than the way we came. Ladies and gentlemen, let's put our hands together for that little clap. Okay. From Methodist Grammar School, Bodija. Ololade Amao is ready to explode again. Please keep clapping for Ololade Amao. Please come. Yes. She's not here yet to encourage her. Yes. You guys are doing us proud.
Good day, ladies and gentlemen. Good day, Chairman of this occasion. Good day, respected dignitaries and agents of education. My name is Amal Oladi. I'm a student of Methodist Grammar School, Bodija, Ojari. And I truly appreciate the organizers of this program for their insight on the topic of this program, changing course and transforming education. Taking things from the roots, I like to define education. Education, according to the Oxford languages, can be defined as the transfer, which is the receiving and giving of knowledge from a more learned person to a less knowledgeable person. Universally recognized there are three types of education: informal education, formal education, and non-formal education. Starting, I would like to define, from using the Merriam-Webster dictionary, I'll define formal education as a process of teaching someone in schools, colleges, and universities. In the definition of a formal education, the words schools, universities, and colleges have to be capitalized, because formal education can be defined as the teaching of someone within an enclosed space and under a stipulated syllabus. Use of the stipulated syllabus includes the study of topics under daily relevant subjects. We cannot, the use of formal education is the most world accepted type of education. Countries such as USA, UK, and other superpower countries have considered formal education as the most acceptable form of education. Reasons being that formal education has a stipulated timetable, which means that we can use formal education. Formal education, it has a length to which it can be taught. It has particular subjects to be taught, and it serves as an umbrella for both non-formal and informal education. For example, under the formal education, we have subjects that teach skill acquisitions and indigenous and civil programs. Subjects like auto mechanism, hairdressing, tie and dye, catering are subjects that teach skill acquisition. And for the informal education, the most important thing under informal education is skill acquisition. And since the formal education has already encompassed skill acquisition under its umbrella, it will be beneficial for us to choose formal education. I'd like to, since we are mainly here to talk about problems that we have in education and how our elders here can help us solve it, I'd like to start by mentioning the aspect that schools in most countries only embrace the theoretical part of teaching. Subjects like biology and other subjects that includes practical, those parts of practical are normally relegated to an unimportant position, which is not meant to be. As when students are taught theoretical process and not the practical process, they are unable to put it into practice when it's time to use their knowledge. For example, you teach me how to solve a subject, and then you don't give me, you teach me how to dissect. You are telling me, okay, then you take a plant and tear it into two, and then you are just telling me, you're not teaching me how to do it. It will be a bit difficult for me to do it when it is time to put it into practice. That is one. Number two, the dedication of teachers nowadays is very, very, very low. I'd like to appreciate some teachers, especially the teacher that accompanied us, Mr. Samson Akimidi. You are doing a very, very, very wonderful job with us. Because Mr. Samson does not It does not just teach you the academic part. It comes into your life emotionally, psychologically. And yes, telling you that I'm very, very grateful for you being in my life. Teachers, yeah, I'd like to tell you that you don't just teach your students their subjects. You should come into their lives and not just you tell us we can't make it up because we're not doing well in class. You should ask us why, what is going on. Our psychological aspect depends mainly on how we feel, and how much we learn depends mainly on us on the psychological aspect of our life. And if you just teach us academically and don't come into our life psychologically, then you are not helping us. You are not helping us all the way around. So teachers here, I'd like to encourage you. Don't just see your student as a student that just sits in class and listens to you talk. See that student as a destiny that God created you for. Because all teachers here, every student under you is a destiny that you are going to account for in heaven when the time is right. So teachers, I'll please encourage you. Please embrace our students, not just as students, but as your children. Number 3, my colleague David Uwoyemi, I would like to really appreciate you for what you said. The Nigerian government does not see education as a very, very important factor. We see children hawking and begging. Most parents have really turned out children from the educational line. They don't see education as an important thing. Now, what you hear is that, the thing is, if we bring in education, no matter what you do, education will always have a different aspect to show you into the limelight. Education has a way of bringing in the kind of how I put it, a kind of ginger in your own kind of thing. For example, if you're a businesswoman and you are learned, if you are communicating with your customers, you can communicate fluently. Unlike some people in the market, and then they're like, and your customer does not really understand you. Education helps you to be able to communicate freely with people, and also education is a means of socialization. We will all understand that as we are here now, we meet someone that is going to teach us things, and we are able to converse and introduce other people's train of ideas into our own. I hope that with all these things that I have said, especially the part of dedicated teachers, I hope teachers will begin to see students more as their children and not just their students. And education can take a better turn in our country. Thank you.
Wow. Teachers. How many times did I call you? Okay. They are hearing not just theoretical concepts, not just taking. If they know it, they don't know it. Another person picking cannot come and kill another person father. Not that kind of teacher. She's educating. Dedication on the part of teachers. And the government should see education as a type of investment, as simply investment. You're not going to get it like selling soap or loaves of bread and get the profit right there. It's there always. And then she said, it's a means of socializing. Meet people. Better your lot much later. Can we put our hands together for this? Okay. While she was speaking, Ibadan school, our own Ibadan school. And I think let's put our hands together for Ibadan College. Ibadan College representation, please come forward. Let me have your name. Professor Luca, please help coordinate Ibadan school. So, we now invite, we take Ibadan school. Maybe the last one now. So, we now have, yes. Next is Bishop Phillips Academy. Representing Bishop Phillips Academy is Adelabu Faith. Thank you. Keep doing it for her. Okay.
Protocols duly observed. My name is Adelabu Faith. case I am from Bishop Phillips Academy. I am here to talk briefly on the topic which says the type of education that will be impactful to me and my peers. As we all know, various systems of education have been practiced in Nigeria. Of all the systems of education, I am here to see the one that focuses all its attention on the learners. As a youth and also a student, the type of education that will be impactful to me and my peers is the one that meets our needs, build us and make us useful in the future to the society. Most of our system of education give us head knowledge, even when the student is not there. This gave me the thought of a contemporary education. A contemporary education offers learning activities which are learner-centered and are designed around the learner's experience in and outside the classroom. Focus should be on action application skills, not just information. Here is an adage that goes on: what you learn with pleasure, surely understand. But students no longer read to understand, they only read to pass their examinations. Students come to the classroom with the preconceptions about how the world works. If their initial understanding is not engaged, they may fail to grasp the neat concepts of learning or information being taught to them, or they may learn for purposes of examinations and testing. To develop competence in an area of inquiry, students need to understand facts and ideas in a contraceptual framework and in a way that facilitates retrieval and application. Contemporary learning prepares students across all curricular area learning stages with skills and capabilities to thrive in the rapidly changing connected world. It connects students and engages their sense of curiosity. School activities are received by students. This is necessary but unimportant. Why so? This is so because teachers are teaching well, but learning is not taking place. Teachers invest time, resources, plan the lesson well, and teach it effectively. But is learning actually taking place? Are students not only cramming and rewriting the concept they are being taught, or are they imbibing those skills? The type of education I yearn for is the one that allows students to explore and the one that shifts from teacher-centered to learner-centered. Why are students being taught traffic rules in the school, and when they get to the society, they disobey those rules? It is obvious that learning is not taking place because the curriculum has failed to include the learners, students, and the society at large. If learning process is going on and the students are merely listening, they are actively involved in it. If the system of education is on, there would even be benefits for you, I, and the country at large, because education will make us obtain and acquire critical and logical reasoning and make independent decisions. Education will make the country grow economically, since it is about acquiring skills and being able to apply it wisely to our lives and at the same time improving other people's lives. Education is the key to turn a weakness into a strength. If contemporary learning is practiced, students will be inspired to be leaders in their own and use critical and logical thinking to solve complex problems. Let's widen these pathways together so that our country will become a generation of educational system.
I beg, make it more powerful than that one. Make it, yeah. Our investment is not going down the drain. It's not. We're making progress. Only the direction we do not know. Because when somebody says there will be change, you have to ask, what direction? Is it negatively or positively skewed? You have to find out. Yes. Thank you. So, that teaching should be child-centered, student-centered. The learners, she emphasized this, that teaching, and we have said this over and over again, teaching is not teaching unless there is learning taking place. If you keep sweating and shouting and there is no learning, because talking about change, permanent change, permanent change in behavior. You learn something in the classroom. These are the road signs. When you get there, they will find the pedestrian bridge. They will prefer to cross the highway. Have they learned anything? Maybe no. We have to check ourselves and know if we are doing it right. Aberdeen Grammar School is here. Welcome. Shari, Esther, without wasting time. Shari, please move. Shari is coming. Let's go again. Shari, Esther, representing Aberdeen Grammar School. Yes. People on this side are not clapping for her. Yes, I can see you.
Good morning, everyone. Good day, my chairman. Good day, everyone. Good day, my teachers. My name is Shari Esther. I'm from Ibadan Grammar School, University of Ibadan. I'm here to talk about the challenges chosen training for education. How education can impact with students. Yeah, my friends here have talked about the various ways challenges. But I'm here to focus on social media. Social media can impact us. First of all, the Oyo State President has provided for us books, books and goods and working papers. This has enabled us to build ourselves more. Firstly, I'd like to make mention of phones, laptops. This can enable us to build ourselves more on how our speech can grow. And also
encourage her, please. Ladies and gentlemen, she wanted to talk about social media, the positive side and the negative side. But fright, stage fright. But notwithstanding, I think she deserves applause from all of us. She has opened our minds to something that is very important. Keep encouraging her until she gets to her seat. Thank you, Charlie Esther, for that brilliant submission from Ibadan Grammar School. We won't deceive ourselves, even some of us elders, when we have to come and stand in front like this to talk to people. They say it isn't easy. It is very hard to chew. Yes. Ladies and gentlemen, we will move on. We will have one more school, and that's the international school in Ibadan. And I hope they'll be arriving soon. But we won't wait, because they are not there next year. I think there's a big stuff somewhere in terms of logistics. The letter didn't get to the appropriate hand, and then so there's, but I think they're getting ready to be here. We'll listen to them as well. These individuals, these young people that have spoken well, and have given the template upon which our discussants will have things to say today. I think the permanent secretary was very happy she moved in this direction when that girl said, government gave us books and biros and textbooks and writing material. Yes, good talk. Good talk. But when we talk about policies of assault, how the policies are assaulting, she will have to answer that one in the course of this meeting. And my dear, that teach academically, but not psychologically. Are you ready? Professor Ojoketa, are you ready? And for the third time, Professor Ojoketa, JKO, are you ready? Exclude. A round of applause for him, please.
Thank you very much. Let me stand on the existing protocol. No, it's okay. It's okay. Let me stand on the existing protocols already established. To thank the organizers for inviting me here today. Please, before I go on, I want you to help me appreciate all the speakers who have spoken, especially this young boy. This young man, please stand up. Let me see you. Your future is bright. Your future is bright. Thank you very much. I am motivated. Thank you. Yeah, the issue of education is very germane to the international community. Globally, education has been perceived in 4 dimensions. 1, it is a human right. 2, it is a public good. 3, it is a common good. And 4, is a public responsibility. Globally, universally, this is the way education has been perceived. Let me repeat, it is a human right. 2, it is a public good. 3, it is a common good, and it is a public responsibility. Because of this universal perception, the whole world has devoted enormous energy to promoting education. It all started with the Freire report of 1972, later the Dillon's report, and the EFA goals, the education-related goals of the MDG, and presently the SDG, Sustainable Development Goal. You will see that education has been given prominence globally through these various policy initiatives. And in fact, the entire transformation that you go on in education was well captured in the SDG. You recall that on September 2015, world leaders met in New York to approve 17 sustainable goals. Out of the 17 sustainable goals, goal 4 is solely devoted to education. And it's goal 4 call on all countries of the world to ensure the provision of inclusive and equitable quality education and promotion of lifelong learning opportunities. And if you look at the 10 targets under goal 4, you will discover that the 10 targets clearly established the transformation that must take place in the education industry. And beside this SDG goal, on 3rd December 2018, world leaders through the United Nations gathered together to declare every 24th January as the World or International Day of Education. This is in recognition of the role of education in the life of individuals and the nation. In fact, if I take you back to what was universally agreed at the adoption of the 17 Sustainable Goals, it was clearly mentioned that education is very essential to the sources of the 17 development goals. And that was why the goal 4 was dedicated. And it has 10 targets. If countries can critically dissect the understanding of this, that is the greatest transformation that can take place. Goal 4.1 says all countries should provide inclusive and equitable primary and secondary education to all young boys and girls up to the age of 12. And they said out of this 12, 9 years of compulsory quality education is very essential. Goal 4.2 states that all countries should provide inclusive and equitable child care education and pre-primary to young boys and girls. Goal 4.3 emphasized that all young men and women must be given unrestrained access to university education, other tertiary education, as well as technical and vocational educational training. Goal 4.4 talks about the provision of relevant skills and knowledge to all young men and women that will help them in employment to secure job as well as entrepreneurship. Goal 4.5 talked about the elimination of gender disparities and the unrestrained access to vulnerable group of people, including the marginalized, including the migrants, including the indigenous people. Goal 4.6 talks about giving access to the youth and substantial proportion of adults to literacy and numeracy. Goal 4.7 talk about the provision of relevant skills and knowledge that will help in the promotion of education for sustainable development. Goal 4A also talk about the provision of facilities in schools, provision of safe environment in schools, that is debatable. Goal 4B also talks about the award of scholarship, to deserving students to pursue their educational pursuit. I doubt if we still have such in existence today. And the last goal, which is the 10th goal, which is policy, talk about the provision of qualified teachers in our schools. These 10 targets, summarize the transformation that will take place in the educational system. There must be quality primary, secondary, quality early childhood and primary, quality education system, numeracy and literacy, relevant skills necessary for employment, provision of safe facilities in schools, scholarships, teachers. These are the entire transformation that must take place. And if you look at, to get more of this, UNESCO released just about less than 2 months ago a book that I would recommend for all of us to read. The book is entitled Reimagining Our Futures Together, a New Social Contract for Education. You can download it. It clearly tells us how the futures will look like with the provision of education. Let me repeat that. It's reimagining our futures together, a new social contract for education. It then means we must begin to think about the future. And these are the areas that I think we should begin to pay attention to. One, the massive allocation of budgets, budgetary allocations to education system. The 2019 Paris Declaration discussed that between 4.6% of the GDP of every nation should be devoted to education. or between 15 and 20 of the public expenditure. But what do we have in Nigeria? From 1916 till date, we have had a persistent decline in budgetary allocation to education as against the total budget side. In 1916, it was 9.7. In 2017, it fell to 7.4. In 2018, it fell to 7.1. In 2019, it fell to 7.0. In 2020, it fell to 2021, it fell to 6.7. And in this 2022 budgetary allocation to education, it is 5.6. And we are talking about changing course and transforming education. There is no way we will change course, we will transform education if there is no massive investment to the education. And that is why the whole world believes that education is a public responsibility. It must be driven by the government. And the onus is on us now to begin to call on government to increase budgetary allocation to education. Two, another transformation that we expect, that we must begin to design curriculum that will, inculcate peaceful coexistence, tolerance, solidarity, cooperation. I want us to look at the evaluation pattern that we use. We normally use non-reference criteria evaluation instead of criterion reference evaluation. And I also want to plead that we must go back to the teaching of character education. We will focus on intellectual education, the acquisition of the knowledge and skills, but it is high time we go back to the teaching of character education. I will be discussing more on this. For now, let me rest in it too. Thank you very much.
Can we do much more than that for him, please? Character education. Character education. Even in informal setting, we had it that you can leave your goods at the roadside. Somebody who will buy it will come there, drop money, and take the exact measure away. And you leave anything on the road. If you are holding it, and you are not standing well, provision of qualified teachers, Professor Dukenda, qualified teachers. The Grand State, I hope you have another opportunity. Because I remember one of his statements, a qualified teacher is not necessarily effective or efficient. I don't know. He knows how to say it best. But I'm going to call for that later. But qualified teachers, yes, very important. And declining allocation to education. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, on the note of, on the note of increasing allocation, I want to show you, exhibit, what again? Expose, open up the man in charge of the state universal basic education in our own Oyo state, our own Peseta state, our own alumnus of this faculty. I'm talking about no other person, Dr. Nureni. Please put your hands together for him. The executive chairman, Universal Basic Education, Oyo State. Welcome, sir. Permit me also to welcome for recognition of what? Yes. Let me recognize Reverend Father Francis Chabi, other preacher from the Dominican University, Ibadan here. Please put your hands together for him. Father, welcome. One. You have heard from the SDG, UNESCO, SDG 4, 1 to 10. So head it. say. Nobody will say. In no particular order. When you hear from the adults, you want to hear from the children. Permit me to invite now Professor Esther Otuolu, Immediate Past Head Department of Early Childhood and Infant Foundation, Department of Ibadan. Please put our hands together for her.
Thank you very much, sir. The title, I want to acknowledge our children, our students from the staff school and all the secondary schools around us for their discussion. They have talked on important issues as if they were reading my mind. They talked about career preparation, which I'm going to talk about, pedagogy, they talked about it, schooling and not learning, they talked about that, and ICT. Those are the things you should expect me to talk about. So I appreciate you. Please let me clap for them. I thank the organizers for inviting me to this year's celebration. This year's celebration is not out of place because it is for all educators, practitioners, policymakers, stakeholders, and students. My job is just to contribute to the discussion of how Nigeria's education system can be revived and strengthened after COVID-19. The theme for this year's celebration is HART, as Nigeria is in the second phase of implementation plans of the Sustainable Development, which the former speaker have talked a lot about. Unfortunately, COVID-19 devastating effects almost completed the plan in Nigeria. Sustainable Development, Nigeria's plan. The year 2016 marked the beginning of the transformative 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, 17 goals and 69 targets. SDGs are the blueprint to achieve a better and more sustainable future as they address global challenges, poverty, inequality, climate change, environmental degradation, prosperity, peace, and justice. Ensuring that no man is left behind, frame this discussion on the goals. The 16 goals of the 17 Sustainable Development reform round goal 4, which focuses on education, which Professor Odobeta talked about. He put you through the targets and the goals. Then, what is Nigerian agenda for 2030? 3 phases were identified. Phase 1 in Nigeria, because we are talking of how we want to transform our education system. Phase 1 was to take place between 2016 and 2020. And the aim of that phase was to finish the unfinished work of the MDGs. I hope you remember the MDGs. Phase 2, 2020 to 2026, is the longest phase of the 3 phases. And that is the phase where we are in now. And this phase was to build on what we started with SDG. Unfortunately, as I've said, between 2020 and 2021, we almost lost everything. Phase 3, which will take place between 2026 and 2030, was to criticize and then start harvesting the fruits of our plans. I won't go back because I have just 10 minutes. I won't go to concept of education, which our students have barely defined for us, but I will talk about how Professor Obanya defined education. He said education is not literacy and numeracy or ability to understand and use English language. Education is more than possession of knowledge in all its forms. It is not only technical competence in variety of practical sense, it is all of this put together. So bear that in mind what education is. And over the years, we have seen, for example, acquire in schools are not what they need to function effectively in society. Schooling is happening, but learning is not happening. That was what Okiki told us. Schooling is happening, learning is not happening. And not where it is happening, not enough learning is taking place. Disparity, trending further, inequality, and so on and so forth. So, basic education, which I'm talking about now, is a black spot in our education system. So it is the foundation that you have the highest learner at this level of education, both primary and primary. And these learners acquire both living and learning skills, but this level of education is poorly financed. Only 2% of COVID stimulus package fund worldwide went to education, and this report was written by Open Board. Now, the real goal, learning and acquisition of skill is what truly builds human capital. That was done in 2018. Now we have the opportunity to rethink our education system, our approach, our policies, our strategy. Learning is important to realize the potentials of education as from transformative tool. So schooling without learning is a terrible waste of precious resources and human potential. Learners belong into lives of poverty, exclusion, if learning does not take place. Learning outcome are poor. Many pupils lack basic literacy and literacy. Learning conditions are most always worse for the disadvantaged and vulnerable. The number of out-of-school children is escalating every day. What do we do? We must talk about what we do to ensure that no child is left behind. Learners who are in school before COVID-19 pandemic and dropped out must be recovered. For example, set up catch-up clubs to bring up those who are out of school, those who are lagging behind. In the Philippines, child marriage was made illegal in 2019 to help girls' education. We should tackle the problem. Learning is not taking place, or poor learning is taking place. What do we do? There are 4 ingredients for learning: prepared learners, effective teaching, school input, management, and governance. So for our prepared learners, our parents they have a role to play. These children should be well fed. They should be not be brought up in the harsh environment like we have, like they told us that kidnapping, insecurity, and so on and so forth. Lack of parental support due to poverty. Children should be school ready. Effective teaching. We have seen an increase of teacher qualification programs, but this does not necessarily translate to qualification, as many teachers lack the necessary knowledge and competencies to be effective. Our teacher preparation program should be overhauled. Closely related to pedagogy, there's need to change our methodologies. How do we make children learn? We have various studies supporting that children construct their own knowledge. Children should be actively involved
They
in
should
the
be
process.
actively
They
involved.
should be actively involved in the process of learning. Then, what about schooling field? Devoting adequate resources for education is critical. In Nigeria, resource input has not kept with the pace of rapid enrollment. So with technological advancement, pure knowledge should not be restricted to physical textbooks, but we should make use of ICT. Management and governance. Poor management and governance often undermine quality education. Effective leadership and government willpower will improve this. Investment. Besides, we should invest in our children. The best time to plant a tree is 20 years ago. But the better time is now. 2022 needs to be the year when the world will finally demonstrate its collective faith in and financing commitment to education. Rebounding from COVID-19 pandemic is investing in youngsters, education, and trusting them to deliver. That was Van Fleet. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Put the other one more. You know, these professors, give them, they will be saying it and they won't repeat what they are doing. They will keep talking because they have gone through so many stages. Huh? Professor, we thank you. A round of applause again. Yes. Yes. You know, well, I don't want to say that here. Yes, it's good. So we quickly move on to my former director of the institute, the mother, who has been not just into teaching, into evaluation, into all aspects of supervision of schools, management of schools. That I can say with all authority. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope they are preparing our minds towards knowing that education has been globalized. That whatever a child is doing here in Ibadan, a child in London will be seen if it's online. There, what they are doing there, a lot of things, we can copy a lot of things across the globe. Professor E. Adenike Mbeke is a turn now. Tell us.
The chairman and all other members of this side of the divide, ladies and gentlemen on that side of the divide. When this symposium was conceptualized, I was told that I will be talking on the secondary school level. So I just reframed the topic to say transforming secondary education in Nigeria for inclusive and equitable quality education that promotes lifelong learning opportunities for all by 2023, by 2030. So that's the delineation that I was given. But I wish to say that what happens at the secondary school level, which is the second layer of education in terms of the progressive working of the system in Nigeria, is not diametrically or significantly different from what happens at the other levels. So whatever I'm saying would also be applicable to other levels of education. But it's important that some attention is given to this level, because we find out that there is a large number of students who are at this level of education. And when we also remember that these students are mostly adolescents. They are, very critical stages, and having milestones in their development. I mean, having critical areas in their developmental milestones. Then it will, we would see that it is important that some focus or some attention is given to this level of education. I can ask a question: why are we here? We are here because we all believe that education has value, and that it also has a way of impacting on people so as to change their lives, so as to change generations that come, so as to change destinies. One of our children who came to talk about, earlier, talked about, their destinies being in the hands of their teachers, and it's because they are going through the process of education. So that's one of the things that education at the secondary school level, and indeed at all other levels, will do to change lives, to change generations, to change destinies. But we can also ask ourselves, are all the drivers of education, and by drivers of education, I mean all stakeholders, not only just the those in the formal sector saddled with implementing the policies in education, but all other stakeholders, parents, the society, I mean the community, each and every one of us, are we all really committed to this belief that education, can be a tool, that will drive the change of and transform destinies, transform generations and all that? So, but I have a doubt that not all the drivers of education are really committed to this. And so we need to sensitize ourselves, we need to conscientize ourselves that there's a need for us to have that belief, and then also see the way in which we can transform education. And so, talking about the topic and the way that inclusiveness has been brought into the topic, yes, inclusive education is very, very good. But many times when we hear inclusive education, the chord it strikes is that give access to the girl child, give access to those who are specially disadvantaged in one form or another, give access to those who have financial difficulty and coming from that kind of background. Yes, all these are issues of facts that are involved in inclusiveness. But for me, inclusiveness is not only focusing on those issues. For me, inclusiveness is the deliberate inclusion of every dimension of the human person requiring to be formed. So when you deliberately include all these things into education, then it is inclusive education as far as I'm concerned. Because you find that the human person is a totality of personality. You need to develop the physical components, the psychological component. One of our children talked about it earlier, the moral component, the spiritual component, and even the intrapersonal, because the individual needs to understand himself or herself and needs to understand the emotions that are going on within for her and how to manage those emotions vis-a-vis health, in his own, for his or her own mental health, as well as for the interpersonal relationship that he or she would have with others. So we need to look at inclusiveness from that perspective. Also, we need to look at inclusiveness from the point of view of making up, developing human beings with multiple competencies. Time has gone when you should just be good in one thing, and that's the only thing you are known for. You have to have multiple competencies, and that is how you'll be able to exist in the society. And when we're talking about inclusiveness, what about the results of the COVID-19 pandemic? The speaker before me made mention of that as well, and we all know that this has really impacted a lot of things. But this COVID-19 that came to the world, I see it as a kind of lesson, because it has also brought the fact that we need to use the multimodal approach to lesson presentation. And a lot of things are happening around that area. Also in that area, is there a deliberate inclusion of online alternatives? Just before I came up, Professor Fadoju talked about the fact that what is happening in one place, some people in others' clients can see it if it's online. So we need to also, in our conceptualization of inclusiveness at education at the secondary school level in Nigeria, begin to see what we want to do, how to complement and supplement what we are doing offline in the classrooms with what will be going on online, and how our students will be able to become adept and astute in using the internet and using it positively, not just using it for all the other negative things that we know them for, but we know that there are positive ways that the internet can be used for. Some are already, engaging in that, but we need to also have many more of them understand it, many more of them invite it, many more of them know that that is the better way to go than the negative component, the Yahoo, which one of our children also mentioned about. Then we ask ourselves, to what extent have games been deliberately and innovatively and pragmatically been included in the education that is going on at the secondary school level? We know that games have a way of really reaching out to people and helping them to understand things and helping them to also express themselves. So is education at the secondary school level bringing this in deliberately, not just by way of chat, not just when they want to do creative art, but all subjects bringing this in and all that. Again, about IT, how has IT been made to impact on secondary school level education in Nigeria? We find that this is important and this is necessary. There seems to be apps for almost everything now. And if there are also apps that are developed, there are hundreds of them out there on the net. But the question we can ask ourselves, like I said, these apps are out there to help people understand things better, make them engage, make them involved in what they need to do and what they need to learn. And it's through that, whatever they are doing can be transformed. They can have transformation in that area. But in this area of developing apps, do we have apps that are really homegrown? So we can raise some challenges around this area of use of apps at the secondary school level, that in lesson delivery and within the subject areas. Can we challenge our secondary school teachers to go out and know and comprehend this, the availability of these apps? They are there, but do they know about them? Have they really known the ones that are even relevant to what they need to do? Can we challenge our education superintendent bodies to also make available fora where teachers can be, their capacity can be built along this line? Can we also challenge our information technology-based departments in our tertiary institutions to also come up with homegrown and customized apps that will help the children to really be able to learn what they are doing? And I think to some extent it's starting. I think one of our own colleagues here in the faculty, Dr. Salami, yes, develop something on, have opportunity to express their opinion without fear of retribution, without fear of being stigmatized in any way or being punished. So we need to do that as part of inclusion. And when we want to transform education at that level, we have prefects in schools. To what extent are they coming up to have fora where they are taking part in the governance of their schools? So that is part of inclusiveness that we must be looking at and we must be emphasizing. Then quality education at the secondary school level. First, I'll just see these ones in points. Quality education is that which from human beings from multiple competencies that I said before. Then teachers should, at this level, should know that their first duty is to foster curiosity in their students. And I think one of our children also mentioned that, while she was presenting. So teachers, we need to know, foster curiosity in your student as the first thing. Then you also know that you are more facilitators of knowledge sharing than just instructors. And that even though you are teachers, you are also learners. So if you see yourself also as learners, then you will be able to see education in the way that you need to do. And that all lesson delivery must be integral. That is, harness, the cognitive, the psychomotor, and all of them together. To what extent does the school curriculum look at the global citizenship education concept? We need to understand that as well, and then also look at entrepreneurship. Let me close with this poser. Must the concept and practice of free education continue if we must have quality education? Should it continue? Well, education is cost intensive, and it is also something that is multi-sectoral. So if you think that you want free education, I hope government understands what it really means, because it is not only the provision of laboratories, giving of books like one of the children mentioned, that makes up for free education. There are so many other things that need to be taken care of. And then because education is multi-sectoral, the parents, the society, the community has to be involved. To what extent are parents ready to really help and see to it that, this education that their children are being given in school, they are part and parcel of it. Because some of the facilities that government says is providing, government is not providing it adequately. The 325 secondary schools in Oyo State, a number of them have their dilapidated buildings and facilities are not yet there and all that. But government is trying, yes, no doubt, we know that. But to what extent have they also sensitized parents and the community to be part of it? And to what extent are communities and families also, invite the fact that they've got to be part of it, until we can have that kind of synergy and everybody comes to an understanding of it. Please, let's scrap free education. Thank you.
I attended Awolowo School, but our mother is a scrap free education conditionally. Conditionally. Parents, as a stakeholder, are they doing their part? The question is raised. Is it parents that don't want to do their own, or is politicians not wanting them to do their roles? These are issues that policymakers that are here will be talking about. And that's how we reserve the best for them. The marriage in Ghana and Gambia, they said they serve the best wine last. So we're going to have the policymakers speak last. We didn't design it this way, that PS, as busy as he is, the executive secretary as busy as he is, even though we can take advantage of that, it's his homecoming, we can hold him here for the rest of the, oh no, you have other things to attend to. You have other things. We will be inviting the chairman of the Proprietors Association to talk, but not immediately. I said we didn't design it this way. INSTI is here because for them that this is organized for their future, for our own future, for our children. Emmanuel College is also here, but we won't be giving them 5 minutes, give them 2 minutes as a type of interlude to listen to young voices. Then the chairman of the NAT will speak to us, and then of course the chairman, so the executive chairman would speak to us, and then the PS would tell us that yes, as far as we are concerned, government, all you are saying is nonsense. Nonsense. You don't understand. You can't tell how it is unless you are there. But you can as well tell us that, oh, some of those points raised, the Honorable Commissioner must hear this, His Excellency must hear this, and there will be a positive turnaround, change in what direction. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I invite the participant, a young fellow from Emmanuel College, to please come forward and spend 2 minutes to talk to us about their expectations of the education system. Emmanuel College, gone, they disappeared. ISI, please, International School. Oh, see now, they won't allow their turn to be taken over. Emmanuel, God with us. Come forward. Keep giving it to him. The guy is anxious. He's anxious to explode like a rocket.
Good afternoon, sirs. Good afternoon, my fellow students. I greet you. My name is Pete Mofumari from Emmanuel College High School. And as we are all here to talk about what we expect the government to do for us in this our state. Like, as every one of us, we students, want to have a better class, better classrooms, like better educational facilities, like everyone, all the private school wishes to have. Truly, we need facilities and scientific laboratories for us to be able to do carry out our experimental activities, at least to carry out our practical aspects of our life. Not that we cannot just be looking at the textbooks without having any apparatus for experiment. And again, we want a civilized classroom, like having technological things to show us more, to explain further in the things that we read from our textbooks. And also sporting activities and our facilities and also in this part of the world, let's say our parents, with their old-fashioned mentality, sometimes they believe that sporting activity is not really part of the school lifestyle. But I say they are wrong. We are students and we need to learn, like mentally, socially, in all the aspects we need to be fit. And that's what we are telling the government to help us out. Thank you.
Yeah. Your own fashion mentality. See your life? Oh, fashion. Hey. Think about it. Let me quickly invite the minister of the International School, Ibadan, to please come forward. Quick. I tell for her. Keep clapping. This. Yes, give it to her. Give it to her. Thank you. We want technologically built classrooms, sports, and all of them. We are hearing.
Good day, everyone. Good day, Sazama. My name is Ibrahim Deborah from the International School Ibadan, and we are here to talk about the types of education that we believe would be beneficial to us and our peers. Personally, and I'm pretty sure it's on everybody's minds, the burden of carrying textbooks each and every day to class, it's more burden than getting to class and actually wanting to learn. If you come from like, let's say a place that's very far and you have to walk, you have the burden of your textbooks on your backs, and then when you get to class, you're too tired to learn. I believe that with the help of tablets and technology, we could be able to make the textbooks online, and then it's easier for each and everybody to gain access to their textbooks. I also believe that there should be more excursions for students to be able to see the practical side of things. Like, for example, if we're teaching government and we're talking about the parliament, we should be able to go on excursions, see how laws are actually made. And then I believe that if these things are put into consideration, education will actually seem fun for so many people. If you go to class, you are thinking, oh, this class is going to be very boring. We believe that fun ways of learning should be put in place so that every student will be able to look forward to actually going to class to learn. We believe that if learning is made look fun instead of tiring and burdensome,
won't have so many dropouts, and also believe that education to be made affordable. The government has been talking about reducing poverty level in so many ways, but then if they actually remove poverty level, even the poorest person in Nigeria should be able to afford education. We believe that education is part of making the country move forward. So we also believe that if education is made affordable, affordable and also fun to learn, everybody wants to partake in education. I hope I'm able to convince you that.
Can we do it up for her? She has been able to convince us that education is a passport to the future. Because tomorrow belongs to those who prepare for it today. They don't want to carry like that anymore. The single sentiment. To the credit of the private schools, that child came here and said, we want to be classrooms like those of private, proprietress. He said, your classrooms are sweet. We're not talking about the washroom ones. We're talking about the ones approved by government. Can you speak to us, please?
Thank you. I really observe the course that is take. At the same time, I just left. I need to recognize that person. Soji, Arimu. Can you please have coffee with me? Every other person in the house is recognized. I want to start by thanking the organizer of this program for extending the opportunity to us as a private school owner in the state. We are not taking this for granted. We are grateful. We are here to commemorate the International Day of Education globally. And the topic of discussion at this time, as has been said by various speakers before me, is changing course, transforming education. There are definitions I'm giving of education. I'm not what I was giving another one. But at the same time, I need to bring out some elements in the definition I put here. I said education is to facilitate learning, acquisition of knowledge, skills, values, morals, beliefs, habits, and personal development. If you look at the definition, you will agree with me that it's loaded and it's meaningful. But the question we need to ask ourselves as we all gathered here today is this. With Nigeria, our country as a case study in mind, is our education actually achieving this? The answer is no. Capital no. And that is the essence of coming together as critical stakeholders in education. So that we can change the narrative. We can actually transform it. Because the benefit of it lies in transforming it. If you keep on doing it the way we've been doing it, there will be no results. And there's nothing to gain by every one of us. Globally, there is a set standard for education This is captured in the Sustainable Development Goals Blueprint or template, which was established by the United Nations in September 2015. These goals, it has been pointed out by Professor the other time, are 17 in number. Of all these 17 goals, the fourth goal has a direct link to how Nigerian education can and will be transformed. SDG 4. SDG 4 is aimed at ensuring inclusive and equitable quality education, promote lifelong learning opportunities for all. The goal is to ensure that all girls and boys complete free primary and secondary schooling by 2030. It also aims to provide equal access to affordable vocational training and to eliminate discrimination, at least within the first 9 years, which have been made compulsory. SDG 4 has 10 powerful targets. If I've actually followed from when it was presented the other time, it read out all the 10 targets of the SDG 4. But for a clearer understanding, we need to run through what make up this SDG 4 that are its components. It talks about quality education, inclusive education, equitable education, and lifelong learning opportunity. To get our education transformed and catch up with the global education standard by 2030, our open statement must be understood and implemented accordingly. Talking about quality education is a crucial factor in combating poverty and inequality in society. It is the key to prosperity and opens a world of opportunity, making it possible for each of us to contribute to a present healthy society. It can also be said that good quality education is one that provides all learners with capacities required to become economically productive, develop sustainable livelihoods, contribute to peaceful and democratic society, and enhance individual well-being. We don't talk of violence here and there. We don't talk of insurgency here and there. And then quality education has been given all along. Adventure. This wouldn't have been our experience. But because you and I have been failing, hence the problem at hand. So we are here today to know what to do in getting it transformed so that you can enjoy peace and I can as well enjoy peace. With quality education, it implies there should be equity in education, which means education should be given without discrimination, irrespective of gender, tribe, ethnic background, etc. It also implies contextualization and relevance, which means education systems should be based on the real needs of a country, or come to think of it. Can we all say the kind of education we are giving in Nigeria is actually solving our problem? It is based. It has to be based on our needs. So giving quality education is one identified way of transforming the whole education in this country. The delivery vis-a-vis the content of the curricula, especially in the area of skill acquisition, far below expectation, and cannot be described as being perfect. So this is the time for all of us to wake up, rise up, and do the needful. Again, quality education implies child-friendly teaching and learning. That is, education should be child-centered. One of my students that came up to talk the other time mentioned this aspect. Make it child-centered. Make it child-friendliness. By that, the children will learn better. And all of us will be good for it. Inclusive education. I will not want to waste our time on some of the components. But there's an assertion I quoted on inclusiveness of education. It says, student performance and behavior in educational tasks can be profoundly affected by the way we feel, we are seen, and judged by others. End of it. So when we expect to be viewed as inferior, our abilities seem to diminish. The essence of inclusiveness in our education will bring about good relationship. There will be shared experience, advocacy, sense of identity, and at the same time, transparency in the students. The components also talk about 2 minutes, sir. That's serious. If you look at what the SDGs are actually spelled out, you will agree with me that practicing our education in that line will enable us to transform it. With all that I've explained about, it's not clear that education means complete transformation. Most importantly, if the SDG 4 goal by 2030, failure to do the needed to get our education transformed, the main Nigerians will left behind. God forbid. It is stated in the 1999 Constitution of Federal Republic of Nigeria that government should provide free and compulsory basic education for our citizens. But with this, there is a gap between the expected and the delivery of education. This gap can be linked to some inadequacies, such as inadequate infrastructure, like classroom, library, workshops, and the like. Inadequate capacity, workforce, inadequate number of schools, and the rest of others. Though the inadequacy can be traced to limited resources at the level of government, these, among others, led to the emergency of private initiatives in education delivery and service to augment and complement government efforts in providing education to the citizenry. Though it is stated that education should be made free, but to the extent that government is limited in resources, has led some of the citizenry outside the catchment of education being provided by government to look for alternative service provided by the private schools. Again, these services cannot completely be free because of the expenses incurred by the private education provider, which include but not limited to annual registration fee, business premises fee, company tax, fire service fee, environmental charges, school approval fee, land use charges, provider direct income tax, cost of infrastructure, cost of personnel, cost of consumable, interest of capital, too numerous to mention. So from the position of private owners, I would like to commend the effort of all my colleagues for a serious tax we are doing. To run a school in a country like ours is not easy, but you know, private schools and private owners, this time education is capital intensive. So there is, although our private schools are not allowed to be run as private schools, to run it effectively, schools should not be compared to go back to school and of the public schools. Government should create more enabling environment for private schools by extending the usual running grants public schools are enjoying, which is usually based on the number of students. The schools be extended to private schools to allow for equitable education. So my colleagues, I think much of beginning by licensing us to operate private schools, it then becomes our responsibility to play the game according to the rule. The target is to transform education in order to meet up to the LGD 4 goal and then catch up with the global education standard by 2030. To do this is the work of everybody. Every stakeholder seated here is not exempted. It is possible and doable. Thank you all for this.
We can do much more. It is obvious. Government cannot do it alone. We need ourselves to move education forward. We need all stakeholders to contribute positively. But if you contribute negatively, you bring in now what others are even contribute positively towards raising the standard of education. Thank you so much, Madam, Dr. Mrs. What? Oh, yes, Dari. Oh, don't mind me. You remember I reminded you of your institution, the Hunters College. All right, thank you very much, ma'am. Okay, I'm told that we have a number of, quite a number of people are online, but let's pick a few of the people that have joined us online. Commander Afaka, Dr. Uba James, Pasiku Adetumise, Ojufumi Johnson, Rose Kodokara, Professor Temisa Ige, Comfort Kushemi, Adebanji JK, and a host of others. And of course, the question, when we come to question and answer, the questions are already coming from our online participants who read your questions and you respond. When the madam talked about the area of taxes and rates that private schools or private organizations are made to pay, I looked at somebody's face, he smiled. But good duties of a good citizen is tax. Part of the obligations that we pay taxes. The extent, I don't know. I don't know. He's not going to be addressing the issue of taxes because he's not the chairman of the internal revenue. No, it's not. It's not talking from an educator's perspective, the one who manages education. And of course, very, very, very separate.
Especially on SDG Group 4, we've been told several definitions of education. I wouldn't want to belabor that because much and lot has been said. And in an academic environment like this, you can see divergent definitions, but at the same time pointing to the same direction. So all we know is that our education needs to be overhauled. And in doing that, we have been able to set 2030 as a target, as indicated by SDG 4, which specifically talks about inclusive and equitable quality education and promoting lifelong learning opportunities for all. A lot has been said, and from what has been said, both from the participants here and from some of our students, that we need to really talk about. I want to start from what the provisions of the Nigerian Constitution says. And what was that? That was partially alluded to by the last speaker.
which says that education, especially basic education, should be made free, it should be made compulsory, and should be made accessible. To me, what this means is that there should be what we call democratization of education. In other words, education should be made available to all and sundry without any discrimination along gender lines, along social status, economic situation, religious leanings, and all sorts. But the big question is, much as this has been provided for in our constitution, which we call the ground norm of the country, is it achievable? Have we really achieved what is contained in the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria along that line? The answer is very clear to all of us, and that is no. And if we say we have not achieved that, it means we still have a long way to go. What I supervise the Basic Education Board, Universal Basic Education Board for the state, although I've had the opportunity of being a commissioner in this state before now, I can say that I've seen that what the government is striving to do, the government has still not been able to achieve it, because as we speak, we have that problem and the menace of out-of-school children staring us in the face. And if education has been made free, if it has been made compulsory, if it has been made accessible, and if you have quality education, are we supposed to have some children roaming the streets in any part of the country? But even if you go to the north, I'm not even talking of the northern city, come to the west here, even in Ibadan here, you see a lot of these out-of-school children. Some of them are hawkers, some of them are street children, some of them we call them evangelists. That is because adequate provision has not been made to capture them in the scheme of things in the area of education. I consider basic education as very, very important. Why? Because early childhood education, it is believed that a child's brain becomes fully formed at the age of 5. In other words, whatever they learn at that age stays longer with them. And I'm a living example. What I learned when I was in primary school, those things I memorized when I was in primary schools. I can't remember how many years ago. I still remember much more than what I learned in the latter part of my education. So that is to say that areas, that formative years, still very, very, very where students can actually retain whatever they are exposed to. And if we are now talking in the area of basic education, that students are not, all students that are supposed to be captured are not yet captured, then what is the government doing about it? It is my belief that education is not supposed to be the responsibility of government alone, as alluded to by the representative of the private school owners. But I'm not going to go the route, because their own route, because I understand what they are talking about. And I will quickly answer the question of whether they should be allowed to run their own school calendar. That answer to that is capital no. No responsible government will allow that. There should be proper coordination, there should be regulation, there should be control. Because all of us know that if we let some people can be responsible and do things the way they're supposed to. But if you allow some people to go their way, they will go beyond what they are supposed to do and make life more difficult for students and parents that are patronizing them in those schools. There are several reports that you will receive about some private schools, not all of them. Some of them are privately owned. So that is one of the reasons why such will not be allowed. But I want to say that the problem we have with our education is the problem of investment in education. If you consider the budgetary allocation for education, you will agree with me that it is not enough in any form. Even I keep saying this, I've said it in several forums, that if the entire state budget is taken and invested in education, it will still not be enough. What is that telling us? What it's telling us is that we need to look outside the box. And what do I mean by looking outside the box? It means the responsibility of education is for every major stakeholders, the government, the philanthropists, the alumni association, the private school owners, and all well-meaning Nigerians that believe education is very important for our development. So as a result of this, I am of the opinion that if you want transformation, we need to reroute our funding sources. A situation whereby everybody depends on funding from the government alone should not be the case. However, if you really want to have a equitable, inclusive education that we are all clamoring for, there are a lot of things that we need to do. Providing them with good and enabling environment to learn, like it was said by some of our students the other time, good infrastructure facilities, scientific laboratories, and all other facilities that will make education conducive, that will make the classroom conducive for them to learn. And the pandemic, COVID-19 pandemic, has taught us a very bitter lesson. A lot of the speakers have also spoken about that. It was during the pandemic that we discovered that we have problems in this country, especially in the area of education. Because whether we like it or not, we were forced to lock down. And everywhere was shut down. At the end of the day, we also discovered that, are we going to keep these students in school, at home perpetually without anything? Some of the education, some of the agencies of government started introducing online teaching, learning on the air, and all sorts. But even at that, we also discovered that this particular method was not able to capture the entire student population. For instance, in Oyo State, we have learning on here for our primary school students, where we engage our school teachers to teach them the curriculum on the radio, and we try to monitor. So we discovered that some were listening, some not even get opportunities to do that. It means what we have done as an intervention has only been successful partially. So which means that the issue of ICT and multimedia approach to teaching and learning is a must for us if we really want to have an all-inclusive kind of education that we're all dreaming about. And finally, I also want to say that for us to achieve this, we should engage the stakeholders, like I mentioned earlier on, so that we also get international donor support for our educational system in such a manner that the government will do what it's supposed to do. The alumni associations will come up, and in the same manner, the philanthropists. There is a policy in Oyo State that if you want to assist the government in putting up any infrastructure in any of our schools, you are free to do that. Just let us know. We support you to do. Go ahead. And if you want to name such structure, maybe after yourself, your late parents, or anybody, is also allowed. That is not a problem. And we've been receiving such support in some of our schools. And the state government, I have to say this, through the instrumentality of the Office of the State Universal Basic Education Board, we have been putting up structures in some of our schools. If you go to Bodija there, Because those that knew that school before, Methodist Bodija, it was an eyesore. It was totally demolished, and a model standard primary school was put in place, which no private school can even compete with in terms of facilities and structure. So this we have been trying to do in some of the local government, but like I said, the state government or the federal government or government as a whole cannot do it alone. So education for all is a responsibility of all. So let us all put our hands together and ensure that our future is taken into our hands. Thank you very much.
Well, the private schools, you must be on your toes now. The government is also building structures that is competing very favorably with the private schools. And I'm happy that the audience also uploaded that. Can we do that again, please? But maybe during discussion, the chairman, executive chairman, will be able to tell us if government is overwhelmed by the population or the rate of childbirth, that there are too many children to care for. Because they are trying, they are building, they are supplying, but then the rate is low. Maybe it's while they are building the arithmetic progression, the production of children is coming in geometric progression. What can we do about that? We'll talk about that later. The PS, man. Yes, but we've told you all our problems, at least some of them. I don't know. The microphone is not far from you. Professor Aluka, would you want to take the microphone to her? I'm tempted to call her Professor Aminat Atere, permanent secretary to the Ministry of Education. Like I said before, if she says stop, stop. She says move on, move on. And so we are asking her to give us direction. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome, Mrs. Amina Tachere, PS Minister of Education.
Thank you. Good afternoon. For this side of the table, especially our far brother, Emeritus Professor father of many professors who are working with the state bank and the referred on education. Other communities here present, especially our executive state universal basic education. Dr.
May I respectively request the PS to please use here, since the microphone, your speech is very important. I speak with you, so that we can enjoy. I'll tell her for her, she's coming towards the end. Yes, please. I don't know, the microphone is speaking now. Where the high point? Okay. Have you, is it better now? Please keep doing the clapping. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. I respectively observe all protocols, and I want to appreciate the organizers of this program for a topic like this, for all stakeholders to contribute. It's very germane that education is the passport to individual empowerment. It is the reason for not enslaving one, but unwinding individuals and opportunity. The delegation has been given severally by different participants, especially those who are here today from different ones. I stand to agree with all the delegations given, and even the delegation given by our school children. The present administration in Oyo State is trying its best to make education available to all citizens, irrespective of gender, ethnic, or socio-religious leaning. They are making education compulsory, and that is the reason why, on assumption of duty on the 29th May 2019, the executive governor abolished the payment of the education development levy. This has been replaced with subvention to school, what we call school grants, for the running of day-to-day administration of the school system. Effort is also being made to put other notable policies in place for actualizing the EFA goals, which is education for all. I want to agree with all participants that education is the passport to liberation. Thank you.
The PS is in agreement with the notion or the proposal that education is for liberty and for development, and which implies that if she's agreeing with us, that her ministry will leave no stone unturned to ensure that all the things that the children they have asked for, she will be in the best position to tell government, do these things, because when you are doing them, it's a type of investment that will metamorphose into development, either in the nearby or in the future. I want to thank her for that. Please put our hands together for the PS. Wow. Here comes the high point of this discussion today. A number of issues have been raised by the children, by discussants. Our discussants are there fully on ground. They have made their presentations. There is a time when those online can make contributions. Don't forget, earlier I said there were 2 questions that were sent by colleagues. I will read them to us as the starting point of this discussion period. Question time. If you have views, we want to make it as brief as possible. So if you are going to ask a question and you want to lay a premise for the question, please make it very, very brief. And then also your question should be straight to point, so that the discussants can attend and to answer your question. Somebody said, teachers are teaching well, but is learning going on? Teaching should be self-centered. I said that have been answered all the while. Even the student talked about it, and we are all alluded to the fact that that should be the direction. Oh, this one is a comment from Dr. Ayo Shisanya online. Said, these students, that the ones that came from the best schools today, are very intellectually sound. I tell you what for them, intellectually sound. Thank you so much, Dr. Oshisaya, for that. So it's time to start asking our questions, making our observations. Don't forget, maximum 120 seconds. That 120 seconds is so much. 90 seconds. It's so many, yeah, I know. That's what I call it 120 seconds. 90 seconds for each question, and then we'll attend answering it. started with the globalization earlier on. I hope the discussant, one of them will be able to address this, that there are a lot of ills that students are importing from online. You see in a movie, the child sees somebody not knowing if it was a simulation, shooting online, and then he picks up the gun around him and shoots the child near him. He finds drugs or alcohol. He feels that he doesn't know what is the content of the one that one in the movie is taking. But he decides to take the one around him, and then that turns him somewhere else or to something else. These are issues with online. What should parents do in this sense? And what are the roles of teachers? Yes. Of teachers. Questions? Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
All protocolly observed. We have heard about the part of the government, the teachers, the policy makers. I want to talk about the part of the students. As a teacher, I know some teachers are really want to impart the student. What can we do this day to make students learn? Because some of them are not able to learn again. They are distracted. Teachers will be laboring, trying to divide their brain and put your own brain there. Yet, response is low. What can we do this day to make them responsible, to make them learn?
If you teach and they don't learn, useless. The children must learn. How will they learn? The child is responsible. The children are responsible. Please come forward, speak the microphone and ask your questions or make your contribution. Very briefly.
Good morning, everyone. My question is, everything that has been stated here today, I really appreciate the state governments for their efforts to put children's education. But there's one thing I want to actually raise. All the SDG points, I actually read about those things very well, but actually, if they say we are going to achieve those things by 2030, with what I'm saying now, those things might likely not be achieved. Because right now, Nigeria is suffering from like an indirect retrogression in education. Government schools are actually like really bad. Like, I actually don't know what to actually say. Me, I'm not actually talking as a secondary school student, I'm talking as a young Nigerian who believes we have a future. And please, the question I want to ask is, how do you stop us Nigerians from going abroad? We thinking Nigeria, like we don't have any future in Nigeria. Like, people like us want to go abroad, but how is Nigeria going to make this place stable for us to survive?
Thank you. Good one there. It's also a question of my mind. Thank you for helping to ask that question. The panelists are listening, they're taking notes.
I would love to emphasize questions. He said the reason why we students are not willing to learn is actually because of our environment. Gone are the days when we see coppers and we want to be like them. We want to wear that same uniform. But nowadays, our environment are encouraging us. You see a secondary school dropout riding a car that a PhD degree holder can ride. So, and there's a popular saying that says, an hungry man is an angry man. If with the current economy of the country, you don't expect any child to be willing to learn, because we have a lot, as a child now, we have a lot to think for. We have to think. Some children are actually not fending for themselves. I have a classmate, she actually opts after school. So you don't expect her to concentrate in class. She has to think. She will eat the following day, she'll buy books. She has to live. So the current economy of the country, the environment, and things we've been seeing, times even the intelligent ones in school they don't get admission, they don't get to do things they are expected of them. Why? Because even the ones that are not up to them, that don't know things to the way they know it, they are not expected to do. They don't make use of their ability. They depend on, I don't know, but shortcuts, yes.
Adele, please. We are beginning to know why they don't want to learn, or why they are not learning. Further contributions, questions? Yes, sir.
Our protocols daily observed. Our first young man who was to talk about parents sending always wanting to send their children abroad. Well, that we can't stop that. For as long as our leaders send their children abroad. So we don't expect the followers not to send their children abroad because our leaders are not setting example. When Chief Awolowo was introducing universal primary education in 1955, all his children were in public schools. So that's leadership by example. So if our leaders can be sending their children abroad, we won't stop the citizens from sending their children abroad to receive the best. That's number one. Then number two, our young lady talk of, on the issue of parents and children of nowadays, they don't want to learn. Well, I think the onus of children wanting to learn primarily rests on the parents. I mean, we are in Yahoo revolution now, where you see young people, wanting to get rich at all costs, quick money. And many of these parents, if you tell them, I was passing across one day, I saw a young man of 21. They thought they are silly, they were, celebrating, what do you call it, a new car. What kind of work is this boy doing? And if you ask some of their presidents, the boy is bringing money. So the bulk, the responsibility of stimulating the children to learn rests on the parents. Then for our peers, and people in the corridor of power that are here, I want to ask maybe one or two questions. Number one, how can we stop politicization of education? Okay, Mr. Shimagide has introduced free education now. By the time another party comes in, how are we going to ensure that we sustain this and we ensure the continuity? Then another problem is the issue of corruption. And yes, sir. Sorry, sir. The private school owners, many of them are not up to the standard. When you send out your officer, one is inspect them, once they collect feedback, they will give them password. How do we, avoid such situation? Thank you.
Thank you. For it. Please let's ask one question and then let others be able to have the opportunity of asking questions or making observations. Young lady, please come. And then we understand the fact that I want us to know that these children must not just that they will be returning to school, they must return to school before the close of school today. So we must round up this program as quickly as possible.
Good day, everyone. I want to talk on the issue of mental health of students. There are so many disorders or syndromes that students go through that teachers just in their home. For example, dyslexia. It's a disease it's like a syndrome that doesn't allow some children to process things fast enough, like reading and writing. But then some teachers see that they just think that, students is learning, still ready to learn. There are things like anxiety disorder that stop children from, their mind is clouded with so many other things that teachers aren't aware of. So I want to make it notable for others to know that it's not only, teachers just think that, students don't have anything they're going through, but then students also have things on their mind and that they're going through.
Tell me that the Super Eagles did not want to win yesterday. Those children too, they want to learn. It's just that there are obstacles. Obstacles, maybe in their head or in their environment that is not allowing them to discuss and we'll shed light on this. Young lady, please come. Other colleagues, you have the freedom. One, I've reduced it from 90 seconds now to 60 seconds.
Good everyone. My question is that why is it that the education in the rural area is low focus? Like the government are not really focusing on the education in the rural area like one in Japan.
My chairman, sir, education. Government is focusing on the urban schools and not paying attention to the rural schools. They use stove and what for chemistry when they want to do titration. they use this, they use that. Why? The discussant will be answering that very soon. And there seem to be no other country comment on this. So thank you, children, for raising those questions. Oh, somebody's hand, maybe they last for now, and then discussants will provide answers or responses to all the questions raised, except the one that is coming online.
I want to appreciate it that spoken, but I just want to add this. In order to motivate our students to learn, please, let's give them a listening ear. That many times they want to talk, and because we shout on them, both the parents, the teachers, both in higher learning and the primary school, please let's give them a listening ear so that we know what is in their mind. Thank you.
Nigerian government should be concerned to accept and implement 26% allocation. Okay, the chairman has spoken about that. Even the whole of education budget, the whole of the state budget is spent. I don't know. What effort is being made to make the profession more appreciated like others? What profession now? I guess it's teaching. What can you do to make it so that teachers will do it the way they should do it? A medical doctor does it the way he should do it. Teachers should do it the way they should do it. Thank you, discussants. Are we ready to make contributions now? I give one microphone on this side and I give one on the other side. So we have.
Thank you very much, sir.
I'll make your contribution 120 seconds.
Thank you very much, sir. You see, the issue of qualified professional teachers and well remunerated is one of the targets of SDG 4. And you see, as long as we don't pay teachers very well, we should not expect them to do anything. Let me give you a typical example. In 2099, there was this organization, Business Force Organization, carried out a study. That's in 2099. That means I will live to up to 2099. So 2019, and there was this organization. They said the countries with the worst payment for teachers and country with the best payment for teachers is online. You can Google it. The country with the worst payment for teacher, which was categorized as Slovenia, pays 18,000 naira to elementary school teachers. And that is the country with the worst. The country with the best pays $122,000 to the elementary teacher, and that is Luxembourg. If you say the country with the worst payment for teacher is Slovenia with $18,000, please can you calculate that in naira? If you call that country the worst, what will you call that of Nigeria? And that is one. Two, Finland is reputed to be the country with the best educational system of the night. Do you know why? If I anywhere in the world, if you want to quote the best country with the best, it's because of a policy adopted by Finland. The best graduates in the universities goes to teaching. The best graduates. If you make first class, then definitely you will end up as a teacher. But what do we have here? Those who fail, they could not get anything. That's those we turn to. They don't have the pedagogical skills. And presently, the literature is reputed. The competent teacher of the 21st century is a teacher who uses active teaching pedagogies in the classroom. We need to begin to look at this aspect. If you are talking about the issue of qualified teacher, they need to be well remunerated. Then we can also have A policy, I'm not saying we should copy completely that of the mainland. We go, I don't know if I should say that the best brains must go into teaching. If we motivate them very well, teachers in Finland are well motivated, and that is why they give their best. We must begin to look at this issue as regards the competent teacher of the 21st century. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. We'd like to apologize for dragging the program beyond the time we wanted to finish. I'd like to assure you that the next step is to be out of despair. Thank you so much. So all the contributors should make it very brief, 1 second, as much as possible. Thank you so much. Next person, please.
Thank you, sir. Talking about ensuring we have a qualified, I want to say that it boils down to all that we have been saying this morning. We are talking about transforming education. Before we talk about having qualified teachers, let's go back even to our curriculum with which we teach or we train teachers that will eventually become teachers in our various classrooms. The question we should ask ourselves is this: thank God it's a faculty of education, and the program is being organized by the Faculty and Institute of Education. Let's ask ourselves, as we teach, do we teach them the right thing? And if we teach them the right thing, are they really getting what we are teaching? Because those of us that are private school owners, we are the receiving end, we have them, we interview them, and we can really say the product that comes out every year. So to ensure we have a qualified teacher, number one, let's do the work as unto God. Let's do justice to the training we are giving them. That's number one. Then number two, if you discover that even the curriculum is not actually satisfying or giving answers to all these things, let's revisit it and put the needful things there so that we can ensure we have qualified teachers. Then we can be talking about remuneration later.
A quick response from us. In the Faculty of Education, in the Institute of Education, we do the right thing. Education expects them to also examine, interrogate what we do with them for them to be the best. We can't teach for them, but I can assure you, man, everything we're expected to do, we even do extra to prepare them for the world of work. That's a word of assurance. Thank you, man. May I request? Okay, sir. You're free. You just make a comment. Thank you.
What? First on the issue of qualifying teacher, I like it was just said, I'm a product of this school.
Can we clap for him, please?
I'm a product of this faculty. And without any fear of modest, I'm happy Professor Jeketa is here. I was one of the best students in this faculty. One of. There's no doubt about it.
The former university president for that matter.
Yes. And I made bold to say anywhere that if you pass through UI and you are not university, pass through you. There are some people that will say, is from which university? That can never be from the University of Ibadan. And I believe the standard and quality still remains. So what I'm going to say, one, is that as far as teaching, training of teachers is concerned, I know what we went through here as students. And when I also taught, I know what we also put our students through. So we went through every aspect. All this multimedia that we're talking about, they've started teaching us since that time. Educational technology, T202. I don't know whether they still do it. Thank you very much, sir. So these are some of the major things. So the teaching is good here. But there's another thing that we are missing, and that is, it is not enough to have a qualified teacher and expect magic to be done, especially as we are moving in the years. There should be what we call training and retraining of teachers from time to time. The way and manner we were taught those days, not in the same way we are going to be teaching our students these days, if we really want to achieve. So apart from the issue of qualification, basically, thank God to whichever organization is responsible for the rating of university. University of Ibadan still remains the first and still the best. So in that aspect, it goes to confirm that anybody that actually passes through University of Ibadan, allow the university to pass through it, will eventually be a very good product outside there. But that good product can become sour if you don't work it from time to time. Therefore, the issue of training and retraining becomes a very good ingredient that we need for our teachers to continue to perform very well. And lastly, let me talk about the issue of schooling. The rural school and urban school, somebody spoke about the other time. In Oyo State these days, we discovered that when we came on board, this is not politics. And somebody also spoke about the issue of politicization. I'm a professional. I'm a politician, but I'm a professional in politics. I'm a core educationist. I'm also a lawyer. So when I want to play our politics, you know the way we play. But we don't play politics with education. And I will never allow anybody to do that. So when we came we cover every part of the state. As you see me here, Oyo State is not far from me again. I know every part, and I've visited all the local government in Oyo State. Within the first 2 months, I resumed going around some of our schools. So at least they are in school, there is no local government that will not say I'm not been there. And the school in the rural areas, they can expect to see us anytime. In the same manner, when we now distribute our infrastructure, when we distribute our classroom, we make sure that it covers the entire 3 local governments. No matter how little they are, they must go cover the entire 3 local governments. Not only that, the mandate we have is that 35% of our infrastructure should go to secondary school, while 60% should go to primary school, and 5% go to early childhood. And in distributing this, we ensure that we cover all the local governments. There is no local government in Oyo State that you go today, no matter how little, that will not feel our presence. However, because of the inadequacy of fund, it has not made that work to be so manifest. The ones you can see around is the one I was telling you. Go to Emmanuel College there too. You see our structure there. We did that one. Go to Islamic High School. That was all done by the administration too. And the governance is continuing. If you go to St. Matthias there, go and see marvelous structure put there by this government in terms, primary school structure that you can compete with any other structure anywhere for adequate learning. But if you can have enough funding to put that kind of structure and get qualified teachers with adequate monitoring to do this across all the states, our state better, be a better place. And that was why my recommendation the other time was that all hands must be on deck in terms of people coming on board to work together and ensure that we take education to the level it has to be, for us to have an all-inclusive and equitable education that will create opportunities for all by the year 2030. Thank you very much.
Wow. Wow. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, sir. I wouldn't want to repeat what others have said. I want to talk about the efforts to make teaching like other professions. You see, knowledge is dynamic. What is happening to the profession now has not been happening about 10 years ago. Now, teachers write qualifying tests. They are not just giving license that they are registered teachers. So we have the TLCN doing that. And many teachers, we have to write exams before they are issued that certificate. That is one of them. There is another program that is in place. It is called Career Path. Career Path is being organized for all teachers that you can move, you can be made. If you train as a primary school teacher, you can get to the point of your career as a primary school teacher by passing through the career ladder. You start with beginning teacher, mentor teacher, and so on before. And the final stage is leadership, distinguished teacher. So that is in the offering. And also, I think the federal government is also, I'm not a TRCN spokeswoman, but that is what is happening. All to beautify the profession and make it attractive. There's this special scale for teachers, which has been approved by the federal government, and we are praying that it will be put into implementation very soon. So finally, I want to talk because I have to give other people a chance to talk. We are saying that our curriculum should also emphasize the non-cognitive skills. The non-cognitive skills are the skills of hard work, integrity, and honesty, self-discipline. All this we take care of. All this yahoo that we are talking about. Those the practices that are good in our indigenous education. We should not be shy to inculcate them into our educational system. And we may not call it the name it used to be called. We are calling them non-cognitive skills now. And it is happening. And by the time you see the evidences, you will be glad that Nigeria is changing for the better. And also, they said the education for all is the responsibility of all. Now, we are appealing that partnership should be strengthened. There's need to strengthen that aspect. What happens in Denmark and other places, we can do it in Nigeria. When UNICEF gives an example, when they take care of small projects, the government is to build on it. But unfortunately, when they give that model, many of our government will not build on it. They will continue to depend on them to say give. So until we learn how to scale up the models that have been given, that we have been given by the partners, by our partners, educational partners, particularly development partners, then we will make progress. Thank you very much. Thank you. Education is the responsibility of everybody. It's like a treason that has been said. But to what extent is government really allowing that to be? I'm still very strongly of the opinion that the scrapping of the development levy should not have been. Parents should be made to be part of what is happening in the educational life of their children. Then it was just 3,000 naira, and it was doing a lot within the schools. Now the scrapping was done. The grants is replaced with grants, as the PS has told us. How much is the grant, and how regular is the grants being given? At times you find in some schools the grant is given, towards the end of the term, and during the term they expect the principals to carry out activities, conduct examination, don't write exam questions on the chalkboard, on the wider chalkboard, the whiteboard they are using, print them. Principals have to run exercises, have to know how to do this, and then you even give the grant. There's a shortfall, in what you are giving. Please allow parents to be part of what they need to do. And that is part of also conscientizing them and making them responsible parents towards the education of their parents, of their children. And let me just quickly say, there was a study conducted, an evaluation conducted during the life of Bola Ige, the regime, by the Institute of Education. And one of the findings, at that time was that, some parents said they don't want that free education. And questions were asked during a focus group discussion time with them, because it was a strange thing to find. And they said that through that, everything was being provided. That even their children were no longer being obedient to them. That when they asked them to do one thing or another, knowing that, and if they refuse to do it, they say, well, your school fees may not be paid and all that. The children will respond to them, sell that and say, don't worry, Bola is paying my school fees. Bola is giving me uniform. Bola is so it has disrupted a lot of things. So if we want responsibility, and we want parents to be responsible. We need to engage them and not, just do politics with this thing. And then part of what government should also look into, this issue of betting that's all over the place, there should be sanction. We find the school children being involved in betting. They leave school, even some of them are still in their school uniform. There should be some form of, regulation on that. Why adults can be allowed, even though it's also causing a lot of problems in homes. I'm conducting a study currently on that kind of thing. But let's even leave the adults' case, separately. The children, there should be some form of regulation that children who are under 18, who are not yet, of age, should not be involved. And there should be some form of monitoring that will pick up such ones. And then the owners of such betting stations should also be conscientized and be sanctioned if they follow the regulation. Thank you.
They should be sanctioned for allowing our children under 18 betting there. Betting. Should not be allowed. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, it's been a long time spent together today. I want to invite, without wasting time, Professor A.O.U. Oluka to please give charge to participants. Professor Oluka, please, a table for him.
Thank you. All protocol duly observed. I think we came here with the purpose, and I'm sure we have achieved that purpose just maybe 40%. Why do I say so? The essence of observing this is to help us to begin to change the course we have been training in education that is not working, so that we can transform education for the future. And we have heard from our young ones who own the future what they want from us. We have heard from our elders what they think the future should be. But the bottom line of all these things is that there should be quality, all-inclusive, equitable, and functioning education. But this cannot be achieved if education is not well funded. I'm an advocate of all-inclusive funding, not only government funding education. If you read my papers, you find that has been the advocacy throughout all of my papers. Why? Because no, it is not feasible. Because there are other competing things. And not only like Professor Emeke has just said, if you are not involved in the upbringing of your child, apart from your child being disobedient, you find out that you are also breeding an irresponsible child because it does not know how to care for, so it's not likely to care for others. So the bottom line of all this discussion, especially to our policymakers, our implementers, the teachers, we are very right to making the course to change so that we can transform the future of our children by doing what we are expected to do. All of us making sacrifices. The government should make sacrifice in funding, and it is emphasizing funding because it is fund that bring facilities and whatever you have. So we shall not stop here. We are going to put these things together. I've asked the discussant to send their papers to us, and we want to follow it up. It's just in the beginning. There is going to be another day of International Day of Education in the future, and on. We have just begun, and we are going to continue. We will put our heads together, and we are appealing to SPEP to partner with us so that this thing can become a sustainable annual event. We are also appealing to the National Association of Private Proprietors of Schools to
also partner with us, because what we have all said is that we need all of us to partner together to move the education sector forward. Children, you are not exempt. You are supposed to change your attitude. Don't just say old fashioned. There's something good in old fashioned. There should be a blend of old and new so that we can move forward. Thank you for coming. The director Institute of Education will be making comments, but before then, the Grand Sage of Education in Africa has some remarks.
If you are not tired, clap for me. Okay, 7 points in 7 seconds. Point number 1, education does not exist in a vacuum, in a society, in a social vacuum. So the first redoing for us is recreating a society that works. A society that works. All the Yahooism and related things, children did not deliver themselves. They copy what they see around them. So let's join Nigeria in creating a society that works. Governance will become better, our participation will be better. Section 2, we're talking education. Ladies and gentlemen, I've invented education with a capital E. As my grandchildren rightly said, there are 4 converging routes to education. Incidental. If you're there, you forgot to switch off your phone and you are talking, the phone makes a noise. You know, you learn something like that. Incident. Informal, as you're just going through, you are acquiring new attitudes, new habits. No formal, when you now formalize something that should be informal outside the school, and then informal or formalized, but everything is related. When the teacher tells you a story, it's informalized. When the teacher gets you to do again, it's incidentalizing. So 4 convergence that meet together. It is not that there is one type and there's another type. Everything is education. Point number 3, if we must change anything at all, we should start with what we do as policy development. And what we should do there, we've not done properly. Was stakeholder engagement. When we sit in an air-conditioned room, I can tell you, if you ask me to write the policy of Nigeria, I'll write it in 5 minutes, but it will not be implemented because it does not pass through people's minds. But if I say to a Fulani man, send your child to school, you say, what do I send you to school? It says to get education. Say, but I'm educating him already on how to adapt to life. When we start that type of conversation, the stakeholder, the person, among stakeholders, I want to call the need bearer. That is, if I'm developing for women, this is a need bearer because she's been a woman. I've never been a woman. So the need bearer engagement is what we have missed out, and we must go back to that. And that's one reason policies don't wait. Number 4, we must bring the teacher back to the system. The teacher. Now, if I ask you, what does a teacher do? You say transfer knowledge. Impact. Nigerians say impartation of knowledge. It is not true. Teachers transform lives. Repeat after me. Teachers transform lives. You always say, my mother used to say, because your mother transformed. Oh, my father would have said, your father used to change you, even though you didn't acknowledge that time. And the teachers you remember in your life are not those who taught you how to count 1, 2, 3, but who did certain things to you that change the way you see life today. So we need to bring about teachers who transform lives into the system. And we cannot do so until society begins to respect teachers. Not to say, oh, God, you are still teaching. You are not a teacher. No, we have to go and respect those who actually work in society, whether they are teachers or not. Number next is, if we must do anything, we must genuinely invest in education. Let me explain. There's a difference between spending on education and genuinely investing in education. If my Ministry of Education has 21 state house, and each one has an executive secretary and a board and a series of people, when you do your budget, you know how much goes there. Compared to what comes to you as headmistress to manage your school. You then find that our system has tended to throw money at education. That is, instead of investing. To invest means put something that will yield that year. Do I speak correct? The one that will lay egg tomorrow. When you put it there, that will pay the ones. Then there is what you call budgetary gymnastics from government. You budget 1,000. When it gets to parliament, they reduce it to 700. When it gets to finance, they release 500. When they get 500, you use it to repair the car. It doesn't go to where it should go. So when you look at the effective budget and the imaginary budget, it's a decline like this. So it's not just a question of more money, but better money. So number next is, and that is the greatest problem of Nigeria. When you ask for GDP of Nigeria, it is lower than that of any Zimbabwe, any Cameroon, any Cote d'Ivoire. But if you were to say GDP of Lagos, it's as high as that of Japan. But when you then compare it, add it to the word of what do you call it, Yobe State, and find the average, it comes down. When you say age, life expectancy, Nigeria is 52 for women, 48 for men. But I'm 83 years old. Huh? Why? Because for the Southwest, it is higher. For the Southeast, higher. Middle, higher. Over there, down. When you find the average, low. So the same thing. When you say children out of school, where do you find 90% of them? Are they in our local government here? When you say those dropping out of primary school, where do you find them? And so there's a huge north-south fight in education in this country, and we must fight it. Because when we fight it, the average will go up, and Nigeria, everything will go up, since education affects everything else. And almost finally, when I was young, I practiced a sport called hop, step, and jump. I don't know how many remember. You hop, then you step, jump, boom. But in education policy development, we are used to hop, step, and the refusal to jump. Yes, there is no way cannot report from a country somewhere in Africa. What I did for Namibia to independence in 1990, when I arrived there today, they remember. The ones I do for Nigeria, I know they see. I will tell you, talk about teachers. There's a national teacher education program funded by NTI and what do you call it? NBTE, British Council. Nobody has implemented till tomorrow. I don't know how many workshops I held on it. Anytime there's a change of federal government, they write me for a copy because I'm the only one who has a copy somewhere. And that's not the only one. So, ladies and gentlemen, say we are very good at making policies. We are not good at implementation. It's a lie. We are not making policy at all. For you to make policy, you engage with people. Two, you follow up, and you learn to do by doing. And I think that's good. So thank you all for joining us for learning to do by doing.
Thank you. While the director of the Institute of Education, it's great remarks. Professor Okeo to please get ready to give both of them.
Yeah, thank you so much, people on the table. I appreciate us for coming. Though I'm not supposed to give a vote of thanks, but all the same, because this is rests squarely on the Faculty of Education and Institute of Education. So we must say thank you and not to away from it. This is the first, and I want to say a big thank you to Emeritus Professor Obaya, who suggested, or more or less used Koboko method to tell us that we should do this and it's happening. And this one is the first one we are going to do, and we're going to be series of others. And I think planning for 2023 should start from now, so that we have more people coming to join. The theme for this year's book is changing course. It means that we have been going this way before, and we found out that this course is not leading us anywhere. Then we must change. And if this can be done in the quality, is garbage in, garbage out. No. If we have a wrong set of people in the system, of course, they will do wrong things, and we will produce wrong thing out. So if we take it from the beginning, from the input, the process is also good. Of course, the output is likely to be the best. So at this note, if we take anything home, we must change course. And in doing that, we transform our education. Thank you, sir.
So much, Director, that for your remarks. Professor Keo Odoketa, come to the center. I want to thank everyone.
Yeah, I thank you, everybody. But the most important message I want you to take home is please go and download this material. Reimagining our futures together, a new social contract for education. What everybody needs to do is already stated in the material. For the teachers, they recommended certain things. For government policymakers, they recommended certain things. For every one of us, for parents, it's very important that we do. Once you Google future of education, you bring it and you download it. It's a material that you must have. Or it is a space material. On that note, I want to thank everybody for coming, especially Emeritus Professor Thank you so much. I thank the Honorable Chairman Subeb, Executive Chairman of Subeb, incidentally our own, Dr. Nureni Adenema. You're welcome. So let me also specially recognize the three people who are campaigning: the Honorable Hakim Oladik, full-time member of your Subeb. Are you here? Welcome. Mr. O.J. Adeni, Executive Secretary of your Subeb. Are you here? And also Mr. Ali, Deputy Director of School Services Department. I thank you all for coming. I also want to thank the Vice Chancellor, who is simply represented here by Professor Ayola, the Deputy Vice Chancellor Administration. Please let it be on record that we especially thank you for coming. And I also want to thank all the panelists who came today despite their tight schedules, and they have made one or two contributions at the African table. I thank you all, members of the panel. I also want to thank members of the organizing committee for putting this together, especially Professor CEO Kolawode, the chairman, and my honorable brother here, who is taller than me, Professor Andy Fadoju. Thank you so much. I thank other members of the committee, as you all, for the beautiful thing you have done. And I also want to thank these beautiful children. Initially, I had lost hope in the Nigerian educational system, on the school system, because of the Yahoo thing. But the way these children spoke today, I have rekindled my hope. Nigeria has a better future. I thank you all for coming, despite the short notice. I also want to thank everybody here. Thank you very much for coming. The press, yes, they are there. I want to thank you so much for coming. God bless you all. I wish you safe trip back to your destinations. And we expect you, inshallah, next year to be present. Yeah, God bless you all. Thank you very much for coming.
UI anthem will rise. Thank you for coming. Good photograph in the front of the faculty, right at the foyer. Good photograph, please.